president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. Tonight, our focus is on social issues. I'm your host, Mark Levine. I'm here with my guest, Republican strategist Mike Lane, and we're going to talk about social issues because they made a resurgence in the Republican Party. What is a social issue? Well, Mike may have a different definition. My definition is social issues are when a group of Americans want to control the private lives of another group of Americans. He may have a different definition. But whatever you think about them, you can call them the 3 Gs, God, guns, and gays. You can say it's all about sex. Whatever you think, contraception, abortion, gay rights, gun rights, all of these things are making a resurgence in a Republican Party that used to focus on the economy. We heard it all along. This November election, this presidential election was all about the economy. But with unemployment leveling off, now going down from the 9s to the low 8s, I think there may be a reason why Republicans are now focused on social issues. In the Republican nomination, it's a big battle, and no one focuses on it better than Rick Santorum. It's been said that as much as 50% of the voters in the Michigan primary may be evangelical voters. I don't know if it's that high, but there's no case that they are swinging hard for Rick Santorum. In Minnesota, in Missouri, in Colorado, Rick Santorum won surprising victories against the person that everyone said was going to be the nominee, Mitt Romney, and he's doing it based on these social issues. And it's not just the Republicans. President Obama dipped his toe into social issues recently when he said that Catholic institutions, not the Catholic Church, they're exempt, but institutions like hospitals and universities and charities, institutions that hire and serve non-Catholics, have to provide health care on the same basis as everyone else. They would not get a religious exemption. They simply had to provide that, and a lot of people felt that it wasn't fair to cause them to, even indirectly, fund contraception. Mike and I are going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about state issues, because it's not just at the federal level. In Virginia, there's a very controversial bill on whether or not to require women to have ultrasounds prior to having an abortion. On the other side of the Potomac, Maryland has taken its step to approve marriage equality. That bill will be signed by the governor, but there's going to be a referendum on it in November. And finally, in Ohio today, we have to mention what happened this morning. A student walked into a classroom and cafeteria, I believe, and shot several other students. We know that there are at least a couple deaths in Ohio, Chardon, Ohio. And we have some injuries as well. This, of course, always raises the question, whenever we have these school shootings, as to how did this child have access to guns? We know he was a troubled child. Let's face it, if you shoot a bunch of people, you're probably a troubled individual. As a liberal, though, I want to know how we can keep these troubled individuals from getting guns. So all these social issues matter. Mike Lane, again, want to welcome you to the Inside Scoop.
Thank you, Mark.
So let's talk writ large about social issues, and then we'll deal one by one with the ones that I mentioned. As a big issue come election in November, will social issues have as much power, or even if they don't have as much power, substantial power, the way economic issues will almost certainly have in November?
Well, it depends on who our nominee is. Obviously, if it's Senator Santorum, it's going to play a larger role than if it's Mitt Romney. I think that for Newt Gingrich, which I don't believe it will be, it would be the gamut of every issue because, of course, he's eloquent on anything you might ask him about and has relatively little discipline in terms of sticking to a message that he might have been scripted to.
We may be talking about moon landings if it's Newt Gingrich.
And I'm in favor of a moon colony. I think we should
you
do
are.
it.
You are. Okay, you
think,
can be governor up there with Newt Gingrich.
No, I don't want to be governor, but I think, you know, we ought to be bold and start looking at things like that. Anyway, that aside, look, let me say for the record that I don't mind being invited on here. In fact, I appreciate it and talking about this. But I'm doing this maybe against my better judgment, because I believe that the path to victory for the Republicans is to focus like a laser beam on the economy and the president's record, and to make this election a referendum on the president's economic record. If we do that, I think we're in better shape than if we bring social issues into it. Doesn't mean that we can't win that way, that there's not other factors at play. But I believe the better path to victory is to focus like a laser beam, the way Governor Romney does, on the president's economic failures.
Mike, it may be the only time we agree tonight, but I agree with you that it's a real mistake for Republicans to wade into these social issues. I agree with you that your only hope, I think President Obama is going to win, but your only hope is on economic issues, not social issues. Still, you can't deny there's been a resurgence as of late.
Look, if you're Senator Santorum and you're looking for a way that you can compete favorably with relatively little organization, almost no money, relative to Governor Romney's, and you can't out economic message Mitt Romney. He's got it down. He delivers it perfectly.
Trump's trying with blue-collar voters.
Right, but
he definitely has a separate economic.
He's not going to outdo Romney on the economic message. So he's looking around for, okay, how else can I score here? And the social issues are a natural for him because he has cultivated over a career, although he's been conversant on any number of issues as any United States senator would be. He has cultivated an image over a 20-year career in Congress as someone who is a leader. Let's even say a crusader on cultural and social issues, and it's a natural for him. It gets those people who otherwise might give him that look and that support to come to his team. I mean,
just to the extent that you're suggesting that Santorum's focus on social issues is a matter of politics to compete with Romney, if that's what you're suggesting, I disagree with you. I think Rick Santorum sincerely believes in these issues. Obviously, I strongly disagree with him, but I don't doubt his sincerity. I don't doubt that Rick Santorum strongly believes in these issues. He's not doing it for election reasons. He's doing it because he's a true believer. Do you doubt that?
I think that it's always beneficial when your beliefs coincide with what you think is a sharp political attack to take.
Fair enough, but part of the rap on Mitt Romney is that he flip-flops on these issues, that he used to be pro-choice before he's pro-life, that he's flip-flopped on gay rights, that you never really know where he stands because he was the governor of a liberal state of Massachusetts. He said he'd be more liberal than Ted Kennedy on some of these issues, and now he's saying he's a true conservative in the Republican field. These social issues, they may help Santorum, but they also bite Romney, don't they?
Well, look, I'm not one of the people that buys the party line out of the Romney camp that, I support Romney, but I'm not one of the people that buys the party line out of the Romney camp that he was a conservative in Massachusetts, and look at his record. He was to the right of the Massachusetts legislature without a doubt, but that was 85%.
He was a moderate Republican,
Democrat.
What Newt Gingrich calls a Massachusetts moderate.
He did what he had to do to survive and be effective in the state of Massachusetts. He's a very astute public servant. He knew how to get elected, and he knew how to govern that state. And I believe that the voters look to him not to be a conservative firebrand, the way perhaps Santorum is, but the voters of Massachusetts look to him as a bulwark against which the excesses of the Democratic state legislature in Massachusetts might have a limit beyond which they couldn't go, and that was the gubernatorial veto.
Tomorrow night is the primary in Arizona and Michigan. Arizona is not much contested. There's a lot of Mormon support in Arizona. Everyone thinks Romney's going to win that. But Michigan, Mitt Romney's home state, is heavily contested by Rick Santorum. Seems like it's going to be a close race. Romney may be ahead right now. You're going to make a prediction in the Michigan race?
I think Romney's going to win it. Look, when Santorum got his hat trick a couple weeks ago, essentially in 3 uncontested states where nobody else campaigned, but nonetheless, Santorum was astute enough to go there and score a hat trick in Missouri, Minnesota, and whatever the.
I don't know why anyone would think Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado were minor states. They're all very much important swing states in presidential elections. But frankly, New Hampshire is a very minor state compared to these 3.
But they were all non-binding contests, and so it didn't matter.
No, that's not true. One was not. Missouri was non-binding. The other 2 set in process.
They set in process, but you didn't actually win delegates that night. That was
but
that's
you win
process.
People who can vote for delegates later on, so they're not quite non-binding. I mean, most caucuses are complex in America for reasons that I can't fathom and don't support.
Stupid reasons.
Stupid reasons, right. I mean, I don't like caucuses very much. But nonetheless, that is the process. And at least in Minnesota and Colorado, 2 very important purple states that could swing either way in a presidential election, Santorum won by convincing margins.
No, he did well. He got the hat trick that night, and as a result of that, he shot up to a 15-point lead in Michigan, which was, what's this all about?
Right.
And over the course of the last 10 days, Team Romney has run a very effective campaign. They're not hitting with the negative ads as hard and as fast as they did on Newt Gingrich.
Oh, I don't know about
in.
that.
No,
they're hitting pretty hard on negative issues, and I think actually Santorum had a nice comeback with the one with them shooting the mud at the guy. I thought that was pretty good.
But it hasn't worked because the Romney campaign has been very much more subtle about the way they've done it compared to the way they did it to Gingrich. And as a result, in the latest set of polls, depending on which one you want to look at, instead of a 15-point lead for Santorum, Michigan is now anywhere from a flat, dead-even race to as much as a 6-point lead for Romney.
I agree, Romney.
So I think he wins.
A slight bit ahead, but going back to social issues, it seems to me that I don't think that Romney has won so much by tarring Santorum on earmarks, which he's done, and that's mostly how he's hitting Santorum, voted for earmarks. I mean, Romney wanted earmarks when he was governor of Massachusetts. Frankly, Republicans seem to love earmarks, except when they're running for re-election. When they're in power, they seem to really love them. But going to social issues, I actually think the social issues are hurting Santorum. They may be helping him under a sliver of evangelical voters. But when Rick Santorum says that Thomas Jefferson's famous phrase about a wall of separation between church and state makes him want to throw up, I think that hurts him not just in a general election, but even among Republicans. You disagree?
Look, I disagree with your reading of the impact. The latest poll to come out today on all of that was the Rasmussen poll, where they polled both nationally and in the battleground states. And Santorum is 2 points ahead of President Obama after 10 days of constant social issue press as a result of that.
10 days ago,
I think
Obama was ahead by 5 or 6 points.
Right, right.
So,
But,
I mean,
but your hypothesis would expect the social issue publicity to have brought Santorum down by 5 to 10 points.
You think it helps him? You think when he says that the separation of church and state makes him want to throw up, that's a...
I'm telling you he is up by 2 points over Obama, both nationally and in the battleground states as of this morning's Rasmussen. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, well, I'm not always sure I trust the Rasmussen with all those recorded polls. But when we come back, Mike, I want to talk about how President Obama has dipped his toe in this, because it's something, frankly, that both Santorum and Romney have strongly condemned him for, and that's with the Catholic Church. Now, to be clear, he didn't require the Catholic Church to do anything. Certainly if you're a priest or a nun or working in the church, it doesn't affect you. But the policy that affects Catholic hospitals, universities, charities, institutions that hire and serve non-Catholics regarding contraception has been pretty controversial. I support the president. I suspect you do not, but we're going to get to that. And also your calls. If you want to call in, we'd like to hear from you. You can dial toll-free 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. The local number's on the screen. We'd like to hear from you. Back after this.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, discussing social issues in the current campaign, and frankly, broader than the campaign in the federal government and state and local governments with my guest, Republican strategist Mike Lane. If you want to call in, we'd like to hear from you. Just dial locally 571-749-1166, or if you're watching on the web or wherever in the country, it's toll-free, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. So, Mike, President Obama was actually Catherine Sebelius, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, was drafting the regulations to implement the Affordable Health Care Act.
I think it's fair to say the White House had a very heavy hand.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. I'm not blaming her. Frankly, I think they're good. So it's positive for me. But no question about it. And the question was, women's contraception was going to be included, but religious organizations were going to be exempt. So where do you draw that line? What is a religious organization? Well, President Obama, and the White House, Catherine Sebelius, all agreed that if you've got a church or a synagogue or a mosque, they are completely exempt. They can do whatever they want with their ministers, their secretaries, even their janitors. They can do whatever they want with regard to health care. But when it comes to what I would call, you probably disagree with me, but what I would call secular institutions run by the church, hospitals, things like universities, like Georgetown University, where there are a lot of Jews, a lot of Protestants, as professors, as students, hospitals, where there are a lot of Catholic hospitals, but people serve as nurses and doctors and patients, the majority of whom are not Catholic. When it came to them, they were not going to get an exemption. They were going to go by the same rules as everybody else. As modified, the regulation said that they didn't have to directly pay for any contraception, but they did have to buy insurance, and insurance companies had to provide that contraception, which interestingly is cheaper because it's more expensive for insurance companies to provide for a pregnant woman than a woman who's not pregnant. So insurance companies are very happy to provide free contraception because children are more expensive than no children. So it saves money for the insurance companies. I understand the Catholic Church has a doctrinal position against contraception, but what gives the Catholic Church the right to determine the private lives of their non-Catholic employees?
Well, they don't determine the lives of their non-Catholic employees. But first of all, I mean, this is something I hope that we don't spend the next 3 days on, because we could. Look, when you have a Catholic hospital or Catholic charities, or a Catholic school, Catholic college, something like that, they are Catholic institutions. They are not secular institutions. They are Catholic institutions. They all have a mission statement, the way most organizations have a mission statement. And their mission statement includes the Catholic doctrine as part of their mission statement. It's part of what they do. Now, the fact that that a Catholic hospital will take a patient who's not Catholic into their system,
the majority of their patients
and treat them
don't tend to be Catholic.
And treat them and care for them, I believe to be a good thing.
Oh, I do too.
Not a bad thing.
Sure.
But it doesn't change the fact that they are, by definition, Catholic institutions. And for the president to decide that he is going to instruct through HHS regulation, Health and Human Services regulation, deriving from the Obamacare Act, that these Catholic institutions are going to violate the very tenets of their religious doctrine for purposes of his particular ideology, to me is a clear, egregious, and blatant violation of the First Amendment.
Now, to be clear, no one's requiring the Catholic Church to hand out condoms in the pews. What we're requiring merely is that people who work at these institutions have the same access to contraception as everybody else. No one's requiring them to get contraception. No, they simply have the same right to get it as a woman who works for a non-Catholic hospital.
They are requiring the Catholic Church to provide it, which is contrary to...
No, not quite.
Yes, they are.
They're requiring them to provide insurance. They're requiring the insurance providers to provide the care.
A distinction without a difference.
I actually see it as an important distinction because the Catholic Church actually would spend more money if they did not. I mean, it would actually cost more as a matter of insurance if you
the Catholic Church
required the woman to pay for more.
The Catholic Church does not modify its theological and doctrinal viewpoint on matters of life based on what's cheaper to provide.
So let's see how far it goes.
That's just not a consideration.
Let's see how far it goes. So you have a Christian Science publication. Christian Science, you may know, is an organization that does not believe in medication of any kind. God will heal. That is their sincerely held religious beliefs. They go to a printer to print out their Christian Science prayer books, and they say to the printer, you know, I understand your child's dying of cancer. If you want to work for us, we're going to have to make sure that you don't treat your child with drugs that we use for cancer, because we believe God heals all. Would that be okay? Would that be fine?
You know,
how far does it go?
The church, if it has a printing piece of business and it can make the decision based on anything that it wants to, where it's going to take that.
It can say to its employees,
and if
sorry,
if
your
it
kid
wants,
can't get
if it wants
treatment
to,
for cancer.
If it wants to direct all of its business in the direction of Christian Science printers, then I say that's wonderful. That's nothing wrong with that.
But what you're saying really is, if you know, the person who's trying to make a living out there, that someone could say, hey, what if I have a sincerely held religious belief that you shouldn't get health care at all? Then I get an automatic opt-out of the whole Affordable Health Care Act. I save a lot of money. It's my sincerely held belief that if you get a disease, you should do what God intended, you should die. I mean, if I believe that, great. It's a wonderful cop-out.
I'm not aware of what religion that would be.
Well, Christian Science is close to that.
Let's get back to that. Let me give you two examples of the Catholic thing, because I think that's mostly what we're talking about here, although there was a great deal of support from non-Catholic faiths for the Council of Bishops position. The first is, let's say I've got 100 employees, and my group policy is that I'm going to pay $500 per month per employee, and that's going to cover the abortifacients that Obama wants to be included in this. It's going to cover sterilization, which is again contrary to the teachings of the church. It's going to cover the routine contraceptive things, and so the president comes out and says, well, we're not going to make the church really pay that. What we're going to do is we're going to say the insurance company is going to pay that out of their profits.
Right.
Well, you know what,
it's actually cheaper for the insurance company to provide those services
but it's not,
than provide for children.
But if the insurance company lowered the premium then down to $400 per month per person and paid for this out of their profits, then that would have some argument. But that's not what's going to happen. The premium is going to stay at $500. They're going to delete abortifacients and sterilization and contraception from the policy. The insurance company is going to take the church's money anyway and use the church's money to pay for these things that the church is.
That's all. It's all about indirect. I mean, look, I can give money to a shop owner. And that shop owner uses that money for something else, but I can't be held responsible for what the shop owner uses the money for.
All right. Here's the second thing.
It's all indirect.
Here's the second thing.
Anytime you pay anyone for anything.
Many archdioceses of the Catholic Church self-insure. You know, any big company
I believe is a closer issue.
Has a tendency to self-insure.
That's a closer issue.
Right here in our backyard, the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. Self-insure. They have 3,000 employees. They self-insure. There is no difference, no distinction between the insurance mechanism of the church and the church itself. They don't have a separate incorporation set up. They self-insure. And the president is telling them that as a church, as an archdiocese, not an affiliate, not a charity, not a school, he's telling the Archdiocese of Washington that they will pay for abortifacients, for sterilization.
No.
Yes,
only
because
for hospitals.
Because they are the church. I mean, they are the insurance company. They are the insurance company.
But the hospitals, the universities, the charities have a separate. They're very much separate from the church itself. The church itself is not required to
the church is under the non-compromise. The church is part of this non-compromise. They are not exempted out.
Mike, two more issues on this. First, I want to ask you about how this looks. They recently had a congressional hearing where the Republicans insisted on men, and only men, several men wearing all kinds of various robes, came 4, 8, 12, and they refused to allow one woman to testify on women's contraception. And all these men determined that women shouldn't have contraception. Interestingly, all these men also determined, under Catholic and other religious doctrine, that men should have Viagra. So apparently God intended us to use drugs to allow men to get erections that apparently God didn't intend them to have, but God didn't intend to allow women to protect their reproductive rights. I got to tell you, that doesn't look too good for women voting in November.
Mark, you know, I heard about this. guess I didn't see it happen, but a couple things about that. First of all, it was a panel on religious freedom. There was a particular woman who had no expertise, no background, and no knowledge of religious freedom.
The minority picks one, the majority picks three. How can the majority refuse the minority their wishes?
This particular person had no background, experience, or expertise.
You know what her expertise was?
In religious freedom.
Her expertise was that contraception can be used to save a woman's life. And they didn't want that message coming forward.
And that related to the panel on religious freedom. How?
Well, because this is a panel about whether or not women should have access to contraception.
Contraception
was
not
a religious freedom panel, but this is all about denying women access to contraception.
There was no discussion of contraception at all during that panel. The entire 100% of that discussion was religious freedom. There was no discussion. Contraception never came up in that panel.
That's because the Republicans refused to allow it to come up.
Because it was a panel on religious freedom.
The issue is not about religious freedom. The issue is about women have access to contraception.
Let me say this.
To say that's not the issue, it's to deny the realities of what's going on here.
And let me say that, there was no one. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. There was a woman on the interrogation panel. Her name is Carolyn Maloney. She's a liberal congresswoman from New York, and rather than stay there and exercise her right to question these religious experts on the First Amendment, she chose, well, you know what, I'm going to lose this one, and she crybabied out of the room instead of even staying there.
You have a panel where you don't allow people on both sides. You have a propaganda panel. The side of a woman whose life was saved
that was the second
because
panel.
of contraception.
That was the second panel, Mark. The first panel was religious freedom. She had no expertise. She had no standing to be there.
Here's something I don't understand. I think whether it's Catholic doctrine, evangelical doctrine, virtually every conservative I've talked to will tell you whatever their views are on contraception, abortion is worse. I don't know anyone, even if they're against them both, most everyone says that abortion is worse doctrinally, religiously than contraception. The irony is by denying women contraception, you are going to cause more women to have unwanted children and more women to have abortions. It's actually against the pro-life position to be against contraception.
Mark, let me point out for the record for our viewers that this is a discussion about religious freedom. This is not a discussion about contraception. If you want to change the topic,
a lot of women's lives.
If you want to change the topic to contraception, we can do that. But we're talking about religious freedom.
This is a regulation about contraception.
We're talking about religious freedom and whether the president has just trashed the Constitution for purposes of political gain. And I make the accusation that he has no respect for the Constitution, and that this is all a trumped-up thing on his basis with an election coming up.
And you would say...
And for him to trash the most sacred of amendments, the First Amendment to the Constitution, tear it up and throw it away, is boggling.
We have to take a break. I got a little bit more to say on this, but I also want to give you folks a chance to call in. 888-488-MARK. We'll be right back after this.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folks, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, discussing the resurgence of social issues, both in the Republican primary and also with the president and also with the states, Virginia and Maryland, with my guest, Republican strategist Mike Lane. I believe we have a caller on the line. Is Carol from Springfield there, or did we lose her? If we lost her, Carol, I want to encourage you to call back. Just dial 571-749-1166. I apologize if we lost you. We would like to hear from you. You can also dial toll-free. Well, you don't need to. You're in Springfield. 571-749-1166. Mike, regarding, and while we're waiting for Carol to call back, one of the issues that seems to me striking with this whole Catholic Church, Catholic institution things is government money. Right? The Catholic Church is not funded by taxpayers. True. But Catholic universities are, Catholic hospitals are, Catholic charities are. 62% of Catholic charities funding comes from either the federal, state, or local government. We taxpayers are paying for this. And I, as a taxpayer, don't want to pay for an institution that doesn't allow its employees to have access to contraception. So as a
Mark, everybody has access. Everybody has access.
No,
the question is the church going to pay for it? Is the church going to pay?
Shouldn't the government, when they give taxpayer funds, have a right to condition those funds and say, you can take our funds, but you got to follow our rules?
When did sterilization, abortifacients, and contraception become a given right? I mean, when did we stop taking responsibility for this?
Different. I don't think sterilization is right.
But it's in there. It's all in the same regulation. When did this become a right where everything, it's free? And the president uses that word. He goes, you're going to have it for free. He didn't say someone else is going to pay for it. He said it was going to be free. When did all this become a right, Mike, or an entitlement?
First of all, to me, the issue is contraception, because we have made for abortion, for example.
The president puts all three in the same sentence.
We don't have federally funded abortions anymore. We don't. The Republicans have made sure.
He wants the abortifacients to be in this. He wants them free.
You say abortifacients.
Right.
You're talking about the morning after pill. You're not talking about a surgical procedure of abortion.
No, we're not. We're talking about abortifacients.
I want to be clear here.
We're talking about abortifacients.
There is no federally funded abortion, and there hasn't been for decades.
But the president wants abortifacients to be free.
Abortifacients, a morning after pill.
What happened to going down to the drugstore and buying this stuff?
What happened to saying that a 16-year-old girl maybe shouldn't be having children? That maybe it's not good for the child she's going to have. Maybe it's not good for the 16-year-old girl. This idea that men should control women's sex lives, which is in all these religions.
I don't believe anybody's arguing for that.
Well, you know what? A 16-year-old may not be able to get the morning after pill in fact, there's a whole argument over it, as you know, 16 or 18. The idea that we're going to force young children to have children. We're going to force this woman against her will to have children. This, to me, is the essence of public policy, allowing access to contraception, particularly for young women.
Look,
for minors.
Look, everyone can walk into a drugstore and buy anything that is legal, that's over the counter. If you need a prescription for it, you need a prescription for it. Nobody's talking about denying anybody access to anything that is not generally available.
Sure, they deny it via cost. And let me give you another example that comes closer to home and relates to a state issue. Recently, Virginia passed a bill requiring women who want abortions in Virginia, which is, as you know, a constitutional right. You may disagree with that, but that is the current state of the law, to also get an ultrasound, which every doctor will tell you is medically unnecessary. They want to force women to undergo a medically unnecessary procedure because they want the woman to look at a picture of the developing embryo or fetus. It seems to me this is, talk about government interference in someone's life. You have the government insisting that women undergo medically unnecessary procedures for political reasons. You must be against the Virginia bill.
All right. Three things on that.
All right.
The first is that Planned Parenthood, which is the largest abortion factory in the country.
You call it a factory, even though it's only 3% of what they do is abortion.
Planned Parenthood performs more abortions by far. They're
And 97% of what they do is not abortions. It's contraception, sexually transmitted diseases, breast cancer.
Both Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation, the trade association for that, have on their websites that they highly recommend a ultrasound be done no matter what the gestational stage of the embryo is.
If a woman and her doctor want it, there's no problem with it.
No, they're saying for medical reasons it should be performed. That's the first thing I want to point out. The second thing I want to point out is that no, it did not become law.
Actually, it did. They changed it. They changed it from requiring vaginal ultrasound because the comics made a lot of fun over the governor of Virginia forcing women to, in effect, have something. I won't say raped, but to have. I don't know how to say this without being graphic.
Don't be graphic. Everybody knows what we're talking about.
Everyone knows what we're talking about. To have forcibly have vaginal ultrasound, now they require abdominal ultrasound, but they're still requiring. Look. Here's if a woman and her doctor.
But it's medically recommended.
If a woman and her doctor support the procedure, terrific. I'm all for it. But here, you Republicans are so condemning of President Obama as having a team to say what is a good idea medically, what is not a good idea medically, and you're even against these recommendations. But now, when it comes to abortion, you're saying, aha, we want to require this expensive procedure.
I'm not saying that. Let me finish.
All right.
So as I said, both Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation say that as a medical, I don't know if they use the word necessity, but they do say for medical purposes, you should have an ultrasound in every case before you have an abortion so that they can determine the location of the fetus in the womb, so they can determine the gestational age of the fetus, et cetera. What the compromise does is say, okay, abdominal ultrasounds, et cetera. The reason that they wanted to require this was because, as you point out, one of the objectives of the legislation was to offer the mother the chance to see the ultrasound.
They even require them to keep it in her file, whether she wants it or not.
May I finish?
Go ahead.
It was to offer them the chance to see the ultrasound, opening up the possibility that once the mother saw the ultrasound and saw that she was actually carrying a baby and not a blob, that maybe she would change her mind. Now, the reason to require the ultrasound is so that the abortionist, when he's performing the procedure, would not eliminate the medically beneficial procedure of the ultrasound in order to avoid going through the display of the ultrasound result to the mother. Now, let me make you happy. If I were in the General Assembly, it's not a bill that I would have been voting for.
Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear that. For all that Republicans talk about getting government out of our private lives, this to me seems extremely invasive. It's just, if a woman and her doctor support it, I'm all for it. But these things are expensive, and if it's the difference between a woman having an abortion and not having it, she might just say, you know what, I can't afford the ultrasound, I can't afford the abortion. A lot of poor women are the ones that are having abortions.
It's all included in the price. You get one price when you go to these things.
Let me go on to another state across the Potomac, Maryland. It's also dealing with a different social issue, marriage equality. So by close votes in the Assembly and the Senate, the Maryland legislature has voted for marriage equality. The governor, O'Malley, pushed very hard for it, and he's going to sign the bill. As you know, there's going to be a referendum. Everyone knows that to be true. They have to get the petitions, the signatures, but there'll be a referendum in November. How do you think this will play? It's interesting because Maryland's a very blue state, a very democratic state. Certainly no one doubts that President Obama will win that state. But in bringing out that support, many think that a lot of black voters will vote against marriage equality. I happen to think that President Obama wouldn't lose any support if he were to take his evolving position and say that he's against this bill. Do you think this issue could hurt President Obama in Maryland? And do you think that this is a big issue in 2004? In my view, in states like Maryland, the majority is increasingly supporting marriage equality, and this is something that state by state will come to pass.
No, I don't think it's going to hurt him in Maryland. There are other states where
Washington State is closer. It's a blue state, but maybe a little indigo. It just passed marriage equality. Will it hurt him in Washington?
Maybe. Certainly it was used, I think, very effectively in Ohio against in the 2004 race.
But I think times have changed a lot since 2004.
Maybe they have.
You look at the national polls.
Maybe they have. We'll find out. But what we know is that Maryland, I believe, has done this the right way. They didn't have a judge sitting up there writing legislation from the bench saying this is the way it's going to be. They actually worked its way through the legislature, It managed to get a majority vote or a passing vote in both houses of the Maryland State Legislature. It will receive the signature of the governor, and then, of course, the other side will circulate petitions and put it to a ballot referendum of the voters in November. So I think they've done it the right way. It's not something where a judge just imposed it. We'll see how it comes out, but no, it doesn't hurt Obama in the state of Maryland.
Let me suggest to you that as a social issue, this worked for Karl Rove very well in 2004. It will not work for him in 2012. Recently, an Arizona sheriff was outed as gay. I don't know what happened there. Maybe he did something, if he threatened to deport his boyfriend, that obviously, I'm not going to condone that. I'm not going to condone any misuse of government in that way. But it seems to me that he was running for Congress in the Republican primary, strong law and order sheriff, very much against illegal immigration and so forth, despite his boyfriend. Who apparently was legal and Latino. Again, I don't know all the details. My question for you is a political one. It seems to me that it still may hurt him in a Republican primary, but as an issue, this is an issue that's going away for Republicans, that young people increasingly support marriage equality. The people who are most against it are the elderly. With time, as the years pass, this will increasingly become a bad issue for Republicans rather than a strong one.
Well, I think if we keep it where I believe it belongs, as a state issue, not as a federal issue, that in 20 to 25 years, you'll probably see 40 states that have.
I think so.
And you'll have 10 states that haven't. And I can probably
mostly
tell you
in the South.
Which I can probably, no, not all of them in the South. I don't think Utah is going to go along with it.
That's probably true.
But yes. So ultimately, it's a political issue, and things will change. Things are changing now, and you're right. As the demographics change and the younger people get over, and older people who are resistant to change pass on.
But politically, I don't think the Republicans should push this issue. Santorum still does. Rick Santorum is definitely, and Michelle Bachmann. There are definitely people in your party that still frequently talk about gay rights.
But you notice Michelle's not running for president anymore,
That's true.
I don't think at the end of the process Rick Santorum is going to be running for president either.
Does this help him or hurt him in the Republican primaries? Gay rights issues.
It depends on the state that he's in. I think that he really, as I said in the first segment, he can't out economic message Romney.
That's a separate issue, but I think he can. I think he reaches out to blue-collar voters in a way. What was it? Mitt Romney said his wife had a couple of Cadillacs. He just threw it off, with his $10,000 bets and a couple of Cadillacs.
Okay.
I don't know how many homes. Santorum definitely comes down as a more blue-collar guy than Mitt Romney.
But what Romney was saying, I mean, if you watch the whole thing, what he was saying was, look, I've done more to help the economy in Michigan and Detroit through my purchase of a couple Cadillacs, than personally
thank you, Mitt Romney,
that Obama's
for buying our
done.
Cars.
Well, he could have bought Toyotas.
Well,
he could have wasted his money on a Prius.
Fair enough. Okay. By the way, Carol from Springfield, in this break, I want to encourage you to call back. We do like callers, or anyone else who wants to call in. Just dial 571-749-1166 or dial toll-free 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. When we come back, I want to address with Mike the tragedy that occurred this morning in Ohio. We don't know all the details about it. I'm going to say that. It just happened this morning. But whether or not the issue of gun control is an issue that'll come up between Democrats and Republicans in November. Back after this.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about pretty fast life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, talking about social issues with Republican strategist Mike Lane. Mike, as you well know, there was a horrible tragedy in Chardon, Ohio this morning. A small town, not really known for any kind of violence. A student, the suspect's name is TJ Lane. There was apparently an eyewitness. I guess I should say alleged, though when you have an eyewitness, it seems pretty strong evidence. Came in with a handgun and shot a number of students in the cafeteria. At least one has died. I think maybe two now. At least 4 or 5 are injured. A very brave teacher actually got the kid out of the building. The child, according to his Facebook post, and again, I'm getting all this from the media, we're all finding this out. I may have some of these specifics wrong because it just happened this morning. According to his Facebook post, he was lonely. He was upset that he lost his girlfriend to another guy at the school. His post has a mixture of messages of Lucifer and a church. He talks about castles and some sort of, I don't know, imagery about the peasants' uprising. It's not quite clear all, but basically it ends with all of you must die. Let me suggest to you that children having troubles, you know, losing a girlfriend or being lonely, that's as common as the human condition. All of us have had loneliness. All of us have had relationships that haven't worked. That's normal, in fact. Kids or adults being angry, that's also normal. But it seems to me that when a kid facing a normal condition, and I don't doubt he had some mental issues. Most people with these problems don't go out and try to kill, to be sure. When he has access to a gun, he can take his anger and his frustration and these very normal things, and it can leave people dead. And one of the things, and you could argue this is a social issue, it is something that separates Democrats and Republicans a lot. Democrats, at least this Democrat, are never saying that we don't want law-abiding, sane people to get guns. We're all about hunter rights, at least I am, and self-defense and fine like that. But it seems to me that when you have someone under the age of 18, frankly, let's look at it. We have drinking laws where we have people, you can't get a drink of alcohol when you're under the age of 21 because we don't think you're mature enough to handle it, and yet we let kids under 18 buy guns. This has got to stop. At least can you agree with me that children should not be able to walk into a gun shop and buy a gun? If they got a parent with them, that's one thing. And I don't know how he got the gun. We're going to find out. But can you agree with me that a reasonable gun regulation is that if you're under 18, you shouldn't be able to get a gun?
Yeah, I think that you know, the experience of hunting, you know, with your dad, going out and doing that.
You go with the parent.
As a child.
That's fine.
Is a very, very important, rewarding.
I'm not
growing
against.
up. It's really good. But yeah, the idea that you know, a 12-year-old or
even a 16-year-old,
or a 10-year-old or whatever can walk into a
gun
place
show
and buy something is not something that I would support.
Well, let me ask you this: the drinking age is 21. I don't know whether you support it being that high.
I
think it's too high.
I absolutely think it ought to be 18.
Okay, all right, fair enough. It's fascinating to me that we have all kinds of police that go undercover. They actually send young adults in or young kids in to buy alcohol, and they catch some store in the act, and they police these laws pretty stringently. We don't have too many people going into gun shops and gun shows and buying under the age and putting these people selling guns to kids in jail. If you sell a gun to someone underage, shouldn't you go to jail? Well, without their parent being present.
I mean, I don't know what the circumstances are that we're selling it. Look,
we don't know. We don't know how T.J. Lane got his guns. We're going to find out.
We don't. Right.
We don't know.
We don't have any idea.
Not yet.
And I don't. Do we know how old T.J. Lane was? I mean, I don't.
I think he was 16.
16. Okay. Yeah. We don't know how he got it.
No, we don't.
It's. In order to buy a gun, as you know, you need to go through a background check.
Only if you buy from a gun store.
Right.
If you buy from a gun show.
If you buy from a gun dealer.
Anyone can buy from anybody. You can go to these shows where they have more ammunition, it seems, than a small Latin American army, and it's all laid out in the store, and there's absolutely no checks. And that's a loophole that we Democrats have been trying to close for some years now.
All right, but what you're trying to do there is you're trying to close. What you want to do is you want to make the individual responsible in a private sale responsible for what happens with the gun.
Right.
Because that's essentially what we're talking about is a private sale.
Yes.
When 99% of all transactions at gun shows are licensed gun dealers who are at gun shows.
Then you don't mind the loophole.
They are subject. No, they are subject to the background checks and stuff like that. What is referred to as the gun show loophole is merely individuals who may have brought something with them, and they're trying to see if anybody would be interested in buying it, because where are you going to sell a piece? You're going to sell it where people are looking to buy one. So at that point, do you want to make you really want to make individuals responsible for a private sale?
Let me give you a comparison.
I don't think that's where we are.
Comparison. We have laws today where if a bartender sees someone, not even a child, sees someone who seems obviously inebriated, and they keep selling them more alcohol, and that person drives home drunk, we actually have civil laws that can give a civil fine to that bartender. It's not just bartenders. If you have a private party and you have a guest that's obviously inebriated and you keep serving them, it can happen. There are cases of civil liability for that. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that selling a an angry 16-year-old a gun is actually a lot more dangerous than serving a drunk of another drink.
Let me say, it's a lot easier to observe whether somebody's drunk than to observe whether or not they're angry.
Well, they can observe whether or not they're 16.
Or observe whether or not they're mentally ill.
You can observe whether or not they're 16. If someone sells a gun to a child, private, public, and their parents aren't present. If the parents are present and they witnesses and they take responsibility, that's fine. Although I would put liability on those parents if the child kills someone. But if the parent is there, that's not my issue. Selling child a gun without a parent, I'd like to make a felony. Do you support me on that?
I don't know that I want to get involved in that kind of activity for.
How about a misdemeanor? Would you make it illegal?
It's a private sale. I just don't know that we want to be involved in regulating that.
But how do you feel about the alcohol? Do you support those laws? Maybe you're against those too.
I mean, you have very serious public health issues involved in alcohol.
You have very serious public health issues involved in guns.
Not really. I mean, the issues in the alcohol stem from the alcohol. The issues involved in guns do not stem from the guns.
It's actually the opposite.
They stem from the person.
It's actually the opposite. A lot of people drink alcohol and don't drive. And if you drink alcohol and don't drive, that's perfectly legal. You have the right to be inebriated in America, at least ever since Prohibition.
Well, unless you're not 21.
Actually, you do if your parents are there, but that's true. Actually, I don't support any drinking laws. I'd be opposed to those. But to the idea that serving alcohol is somehow more dangerous than giving a kid a gun, I mean,
again, the alcohol is per se the issue in that case, and
the driving requires the driving.
The gun is not per se the issue. The issue is.
You're saying you have to shoot with the gun, and I'm saying you have to drive drunk with the alcohol. And my point is...
No, I'm saying you have to be some sort of mentally deranged person to go out and use the gun for a bad purpose. This guy, I mean, he was obviously mentally ill. Whatever level of mental illness it was, he was obviously mentally ill.
But I don't know that the issues he had are that different from other kids with their issues. He obviously acted on them in a horrific way. But loneliness and mixed up...
You started off by saying that 99% of them don't...
That's true.
...don't react that way, they don't.
That's true.
I mean, it's just...
That's true. But it's still a weapon in the hands of someone who... Look, what is wrong with reasonable regulation of guns? Very few liberals want to ban guns. There's some of them, I'm not one of them, who want to ban guns entirely. The vast majority of liberals say, you know what, don't give them the violent felons, don't give them the mentally ill people, don't give them the children without their parents, maybe require them to take some kind of test. We take tests to drive cars. So you take a test to show you know how a gun works. licensing, reasonable regulation, not banning. What's so wrong with that? Why can't we come to some middle position between conservatives and liberals on these close the gun shoulder poll, things like that?
I think that we do agree.
No armor-piercing bullets.
I think we do agree on the mentally ill people shouldn't have them, that convicted felons shouldn't have them. You know,
people convicted of domestic violence shouldn't have them.
Convicted of domestic violence, yes. Very important thing. Unfortunately now, that's, you know, it really becomes very difficult to get a gun if you even be accused of domestic violence.
Well, if there's a TRO against you for domestic violence, then
a TRO is, it's like inviting a ham sandwich, Mark. It can be gotten at the drop of a hat.
It's also temporary, and it can be ended. If we can have a week to go before a judge to see whether the domestic violence actually occurred before we let some guy buy a Glock.
Or some woman buy a Glock. Let's not make this sexist, okay?
Some woman buy a Glock. I don't want to make it sexist, except that most of these incidents are men killing women, not the other way around. I mean, you know that's true.
Statistically, you're probably on that.
Overwhelmingly so. So let's move apart from what happened in Ohio and talk about the campaign. To what issue? It's interesting. Obama has not done a lot on guns. In fact, I can't think of anything he's done on guns. If anything, liberals should be angry at him for not promoting gun control. And yet you find the NRA head condemning Obama. Yeah, he didn't do it in his first term, but in his next term, he's going to come, he's going to take away our guns. Is that kind of rhetoric? I mean, clearly Obama didn't do any gun regulation that I can think of. Can you think of any in his first term? I can't recall any. Will what happened in Ohio, and will the issue of guns in general be a big issue in the fall campaign?
I don't think so. I don't think the only one that wants it to be an issue is the NRA for two reasons.
Gives them money.
Well, it gives them money,
Sure.
but it gets their membership energized and up and voting, and they do honestly believe. I mean, the president, the head of the NRA, is a personal friend of mine, and they honestly believe
that Obama's going to come and take away his guns.
Right after the election, that's going to be one of the first 2 or 3 orders of business. And they point to any number of areas where he's broken his promise so far to say, well, see, he's broken those promises, therefore he has no credibility, he's going to break this promise.
Isn't it unfair to say Democrats want to take away your guns when the vast majority of Democrats want what I want, reasonable regulation? Yeah, if you're mentally ill, we do want to take away your gun. If you're a convicted felon, we do want to take away your gun. But for the rest of you, we want reasonable. Just say, you know, Obama wants to regulate your guns, that's fair. But Obama wants to take away your guns, that's unfair.
Well, I'm not the one putting that word out, but
I know that. But your friend is.
We've seen the same emails. You know, we've seen the same messages and stuff like that. Look, you talked before about licensing. And we license cars, and so why don't we license guns? Well, the difference is that you have no particular constitutional right to drive a car, but you do have a constitutional right to have a gun.
You and I have argued about this, and I believe that if you're in a militia, you have a constitutional right to own a gun, a well-regulated militia. You and I disagree on that.
But as learned as you are, the Supreme Court disagreed with you, didn't they?
The Supreme Court agreed with me for more than 200 years. They just changed their mind last year, but if President Obama gets reelected, we might get a Supreme Court justice who actually understands the Second Amendment the way it is written. But we'll have to leave it there. Mike, I always appreciate your coming on the show. Thank you so much. And we'll see how all these social issues play out in November. I have to tell you, the one thing we agree on is that this does not bode well for Republicans. Because when it comes to social issues, I think the majority of American voters stand with us.
Well, you know what? Very quickly, you got your guys, you got my guys, and it's the 10% in the middle who are playing too.
That's true. All right, hope you enjoyed the Inside Scoop. If you want to find out more about me or the Inside Scoop, just go to marklevinetalk.com where we will have this very show. Thanks again for listening.